Hello, I'm Frank Motze. I'm a history teacher here at St. Helena High School in St. Helena, California. I want to let you know that students in a history elective class I am teaching this school year have an opportunity to not only study the war, but interview Mr. Frank Buckles, who at 107 years of age, 108 on February 1, is the last surviving American veteran of that war, a war that ended in 1918. Today is Sunday, November 9, 2008. I'm in Charlestown, West Virginia, and with me are two students from a World War I history elective class I am teaching in the 2008-2009 school year. We are here because of Mr. Frank Buckles. My wife Janice and I had the privilege of meeting Mr. Buckles and his daughter Susanna about 6 months ago. Gracious and enthusiastic, both Mr. Buckles and his daughter gave permission for me to have two students come with me to interview Mr. Buckles. We would all especially like to thank Susanna Buckles Flanagan for her graciousness, her sense of humor, her enthusiasm, all of which have made this day possible.
Thank you so much, Mr. Buckles, for allowing us the privilege of speaking with you today. I'm Sarah McMaster.
And I'm Webster Rasmussen.
And we are students at St. Helena High School in St. Helena, California. I have the honor of beginning our interview. May we begin?
What's the very first question you're going to ask me?
You lived a remarkable and very interesting life. For example, here you are, the last living U.S. veteran of World War I. And service to your country runs in the family. As a young boy, you heard stories about your ancestors' role in the American Revolution and in the Civil War.
Yes. My mother's father, when I was a small boy, would tell me about his grandfather who served in the American Revolution from Franklin County, North Carolina. And the other side of the family, my grandmother told me that her grandfather was killed at the Battle of Oriskany in New York. And his name was on the monument. They were having a bicentennial at Oriskany, and Nelson Rockefeller, the governor of New York, was the speaker of the day, and we sat close together. And he said that the Battle of Oriskany was his favorite story when he was a boy, and he remembered it so well. Is that your answer?
Thank you. You grew up on a farm in Missouri. What was your favorite childhood memory?
Probably the earliest is when I was in the cradle, and I would hear in the morning, the hired help would come in to have their breakfast, and I'd hear all these cheerful voices. That's my earliest memories. And at that time, they were often mentioning about going to the moon. And I remember when I'd be about 2 years old, sitting out on the front porch and looking up at that beautiful moon, and I said, there's nobody who can be up there on that moon. Those are the earliest memories.
If that's your earliest, what would be your favorite memory?
The what?
What would be your favorite childhood memory?
Favorite childhood memory? Well, I can, as how young, I can remember when I was 3 years old. Oh yes, and my father's farm was 4 miles north of Bethany in Harrison County, Missouri, and Mr. Rodeke, who was the mayor of the town, had an automobile, the first one to that town, and he needed some repair. At that time, there was no local place for obtaining help, so they had to send to the factory. So Mr. Rodeke put a single tree on an automobile and a team of horses and drove it around the countryside so that people would become accustomed to see horses, would become accustomed to seeing an automobile. One of the first airplane I saw was a biplane by Lincoln Beechey, and my mother had taken me on to visit some of her relatives in Decatur, Illinois, and Lincoln Beechey was coming. He would fly his biplane around the racetrack, and probably was born in Oldfield, would drive his automobile around the track, racing against the time. There was one catch. It was 25 cents admission to see the plane. But I persuaded the boys. I had no bicycle because we were away from home. But we went to the ballpark, climbed over the fence, and went right over to Lincoln Beechey. So I shook hands with Lincoln Beechey, patted his biplane, and watched the race. I was about 7 years old then.
By the age 15, you were living in Oklahoma.
Yes.
Will you share with us how that came about?
I went to Oklahoma my father bought land in Dewey County, Oklahoma, near the little town of Oakwood. And he was sending horses, Percheron mares, to this land, and with some farming equipment. So he was going to pay a man $20 and his expenses for taking them to Oakwood. I persuaded my father to let me take the horses, which I did, and my instructions were to go to the bank. The banker was out getting a bucket of water in the windmill in the middle of the street. I went in with him and helped him to sleep out and so forth. And he just received a letter from Mr. Grove, who was the bookkeeper and some of the cashier of the bank, saying that he was going to stay in Texas with his family and was not coming back. That left the job. So I got the job. I was 15 years old when I had my first job as a banker.
And because you got the job, that's why you moved to Oklahoma. Because of that job is why you moved to Oklahoma?
Yes.
Sounds like you had an adventurous spirit at a young age.
Well,
were you always looking for adventure?
I was looking for adventure. No, adventure was looking for me. Then the United States declared war on Germany on the 6th of April, 1917. And my first view of a recruiting station was a fellow rancher had invited me to come to his home in Wichita, Kansas during the state fair. While there, I went around to the Marine Corps to enlist, giving my age as 18. The very nice sergeant said, "Sorry, but you have to be 21. Well, I went out to Larned, Kansas, where my grandmother was living with my uncle and aunt, who had a bank in Larned, and came back later, and I was 21. He said, he gave me the test, which I could pass, but he said, "I'm sorry, but you're just not heavy enough." So I decided to go elsewhere. I took the train to Oklahoma City. There was the same results with the Navy and the Marine Corps. But the captain asked me where was my birth certificate. I explained that birth certificates were not used, or not available when I was born. So they accepted me. And I was as a regular army man, I was given choice of service. And one of the older sergeants said, if you want to get to France in a hurry, join the ambulance service, because the French are begging for ambulance service. I applied to ambulance, and they sent me to Fort Riley, Kansas, for training. In December, in a few months, in December 1917, I went overseas on the Carpathia, the ship that went to the rescue of the Titanic. And members of the crew, the officers and members of the crew had been aboard when they made the rescue of the Titanic.
Were there any fellow soldiers on the Carpathia with you?
Well, that first Fort Riley Casualty Detachment, a group of approximately 100 men were in my group.
Were you all nervous or excited?
No, neither one.
Really?
No. I was interested, but I wasn't excited. I appreciated the fact that I could be there. I was only 16.
Do you know anyone else who enlisted underage?
Well, they didn't tell me about that. There probably were, because there were some young men aboard there, but they were still older than me. But nobody knew my age anyhow. I told them. So if they asked me how old I was, I'd look them in the eye and tell them I was 21.
When you were in the ambulance corps in France, and did seeing the dead and wounded affect your feelings about the war?
Among other things, I drove an ambulance. Not extensively, not to much importance, but I drove one. It would be a Ford could handle 2 stretcher cases. But I was not in the front lines at any time.
Did you see any of the wounded?
Anyone?
Did you see any of the wounded since you were
Oh, yes. I began to see the wounded people, wounded men, as soon as I landed in England, because they would bring them oftentimes back to England.
Did that change your feelings about the war at all?
No, I felt that the war was a very serious business, because I noticed everywhere from the very beginning, you see all the officers have a black band around their meaning that a relative had been killed.
When the war ended, you were returning German prisoners of war
Yes.
to Germany.
Yes.
How did that experience affect you?
Hmm?
How did that experience of returning the German POWs to Germany affect you?
Oh, it was a nice experience, as far as I was concerned, because I had been with the prisoner of war escort some time before we started back to Germany. On the group that I was with, we went from the Gironde district to Ischutiel, and from there we had 650 prisoners, and I think it was 36 men who were in charge of the POW. I noticed that the train would stop quite often for 15, 20 minutes, so you could run around, you go off, and I would always hop out and run up and down the deck, and I missed the coach, but the German soldiers were sitting in the open doorway, and they gave me a signal as I came along. Big German took me by the arm and hauled me aboard. Well, the first day we came into Germany, they had the equivalent of the Red Cross, who, while we were stopped there, they brought in, said to bring your coffee cup. Everybody's going to get coffee. Well, the prisoners all lined up, all 650, I lined up with them. When it came to me, distinguished looking old gentleman, gave me the coffee. And I said, "Danke sehr, das Coffee ist sehr gut." With that, he reached down but underneath and brought up a loaf of potato bread, took it in a slice and gave it to me. I said, "Danke sehr, das Brot ist sehr gut." Well, with that, I got a piece of bologna. Well, I really learned early the advantage of a foreign language. We took these prisoners to Lemberg, which is about 120 miles south of Koblenz on the Rhine. And then after we left the prisoners, the boxcar went back to Koblenz. And they had a railway hotel. I didn't stay there. I stayed on in the boxcar the first night. And the hotel, I could get soap and towel and have a shower bath for about 2 cents. And then I discovered that in order to entertain the Americans, keep them out of trouble, they had different things of interest for them to do. And one of them was a Rhineland trip. Well, I didn't have any invitations, but I parked myself in a doorway right near the gangway, and when no one was looking, I'd line up, go aboard. I knew that during the trip I'd have a sandwich and possibly somebody give me a beer. Then I came back on the Pocahontas in 1920.
While you were in Germany, did you have any special memories of those German prisoners of war?
Yes, I traded it for a belt, got medallions, and I have a German cap, a fatigue cap. The German soldiers were very proud of their belts. But I got medallions. It's well made and a good one.
Did they give you any other souvenirs from your time with them?
Probably traded for a number of items. I have a nice with von Hindenburg silhouette on it. And of course I've been to Germany many times since then.
When you think back on World War I, is there a single memory that stands out from all the others?
The last memory I have of France Pleasant, yes, it stands out. I had applied for a vacation, and I stipulated I wanted to go to sea, along the sea coast, and I went to chose the little town of Alres just from the map. It was at the top of the Bay of Alcachon, and they probably must have someone else have a plan for a similar vacation. So there was a man with me, a Sergeant Henry, who said that his father was a colonel in the army. And he gave me some good advice. He didn't smoke, neither did I, but each took 6 cartons of cigarettes of Lucky Strikes, and with that was covered all my expenses while I was there at the renting boats and so forth. Oh, and the little hotel was called Dupuy, and we were probably the only Americans they'd ever seen in that little village. And the hotel was Dupuy, and they gave a dance, invited everybody in town to meet us. So we were celebrities right off. I didn't know how to dance, but I enjoyed being there. Well, when time came to go back, Sergeant Henry was insistent that we go return at the proper date. But I persuaded him that I was not going back because I still had my money. And where are you going? I'm going to Biarritz. Biarritz was the exclusive town on the Mediterranean, on the sea. I think it's about 120 or 30 miles from Arras. We got off at the railway station. There was a little hotel there where Sergeant Henry went, but there was also a carriage with a beautiful team of horses and fine background. And the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. That's where I went. And when I came in to the hotel, there was an American sergeant, captain, and he asked me, "What are you doing here?" I looked him in the eye and I said, "Tell me, sir, what are you doing here?" I never saw him again. Well, I remember distinctly my room and the balcony. They had a balcony, and I got a postcard and put an X alongside of that, sent it home to my parents. Well, I did think it a little odd that so many people came into my room. One or two housemaids might be but when there'd be a dozen of them coming out, everybody wanted to see that American who was in the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. Well, after a while I realized I should go to dinner. I stopped first at the bar. And a beautiful long bar. I was the only person seated at the bar. And I heard, my French was very poor, but I knew what they were talking about. They were excited at these tables next to the bar. They were excited about that American who was at the aristocratic hotel. Well, I'm a Missourian by birth, and nobody any better than me. So I felt that way. So all the people who were objecting were all women at these tables. Pretty soon, a distinguished-looking gentleman came in, tall, and he was a Russian prince in full dress with decorations. And they said now we'll ask Prince so-and-so. So they told their story to the prince, and he looked me over and he said, he's evidently conducting himself as a gentleman. He may stay here as long as he wishes.
It's quite the story.
Oh, when we got back to Bordeaux, Saint-Sulpice, where we started, they turned me over to a young lieutenant to tell me about my punishment. He really enjoyed it. He said he wished he could have done that. They didn't let me free.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Beckles. This is an honor for me and I thank you for this opportunity. At this time, I'd like to introduce our other interviewer and my fellow student, Webster Rasmussen. And he'll be the one to continue with this interview. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Buckles. As Sarah mentioned, we are honored to be here. You've been very generous with your time, and we treasure hearing about your experiences. In the 1930s, you visited Germany. Was it difficult to reconcile your positive memories of the World War I German prisoners of war with what you saw in Germany under Adolf Hitler?
Oh, I saw Hitler? Oh, yes, I saw him a couple of times. It was no big deal. I did think about it afterwards. Now, it was where I saw him as close up was in Bremen, at the hotel, and I came down from the second floor and the stairway and walked right into the group of the Germans, including Hitler. And I didn't notice there's any particular distinction between him and the others.
When you visited Germany under Hitler, did you notice anything different about it than from before?
Well, I was there when Hitler came in. Or no, he was there, all right, but in the background. And I watched them take over. I know how to become a dictator.
So, under Hitler, was there anything about Germany that concerned you especially?
It was very evident that there was one man in charge. And the way they handled it divided at least in Hamburg, divided the arrondissements maybe to 100, might be limited to 100 or 200, or I don't know how many. But they had the meetings, certain dates, you would have a meeting, and everybody wanted to show up. Somebody be right after you, drag you in there. You couldn't escape him. Oh, of course, I was in Germany many times, and when someone says, "Heil Hitler," you throw up their hand, you have to keep your hand in your pocket to keep from doing it yourself.
You were stationed in Manila in the Philippines
Yes.
in 1940, correct?
Yeah.
And in 1941 you had a chance to leave.
I don't know about that. Yes, I had a chance to leave. I could have been, but my instructions were to stay there. I went to MacArthur's headquarters, and they told me of someone else who had World War I service and was in a high position, but when he went into the Army, he didn't have much of a choice.
So, you spent more than 3 years as a prisoner of war in the
Yes.
Philippines. How were you treated?
Well, in 3 years, there's something happening every day almost. But the bad treatment was when it came to the period of starvation. And even at the Los Baños, it was purposeful starvation. Because when a man's starving, he can't, not much he can do. When a person is hungry, then you can yell and shout and cause a disturbance. But when you're starving, you don't do that.
How were you able to cope with this?
Well, I always had somebody who was looking up to me to do something. I was a small group of intelligent men who would understand what I was talking about, that you have to keep yourself in as good physical condition as possible, because if you do have a chance to the war to get out, then you want to be able to survive. For me, it was a survival. I don't know how many of those ex-prisoners there are today, but I don't think there were very many.
When you were in the prison camp,
Yes.
was there any special memory or anything you had that helped keep you going?
I had the calisthenics class every morning with a small group of men. And I helped them out. Since I've been here, we had a meeting in New York of the Overseas Press Club. And there was one young man who had been a friend of mine before the war. And as I came in, he was in my class. As I came in, he held up his hand. Frank, I want to tell you that Barbara and I, Barbara Clear, his wife, are doing your exercises, and we're teaching the children.
The war ended in 1945, and the following year you were married. How would you explain how you met your wife?
Oh, well, I knew Audrey. Wherever I went, I was in San Francisco, even in New York, I had a place where you could ride. I was interested in equitation. I'd had 7 years of it in Germany, not consistently, but whenever I was in port. So at over at Mills College, General Crest had a writing school, and I attended the writing. Now, I had seen Audrey there, but never met her. But one day, he asked me if I would take Audrey home, because her relative who stopped for her wouldn't be there that day. So I took her home, met her parents. She was in Berkeley, and took her to Trader Vic's a couple of times. And then her father, what she wanted to do was see the nightlife of San Francisco. That's a different story. So she was still in college. So I called her father and told him that if I was going to take his daughter over to the nightclubs, you must know that things only begin to liven up a bit after 11 o'clock at night in San Francisco. So then when I was passenger on the ship going out to the Philippines, they came to see me off. And I had not many, one or two letters while I was in a prison camp, and she sent me that picture, not in a frame, just a picture, along with the blue ribbon that she knew that I would have been using this horse in a horse show. And then I came back to San Francisco and dated Audrey several times, and then a year later married.
For most of the years between the two world wars, you had been in the shipping business and had traveled a great deal. Was settling down a big change for you?
Well, it wasn't difficult, because Audrey was born on a ranch, her grandfather's ranch in Pleasanton. She was more happy in the country. She had sinus problem with San Francisco, a lot of fog in San Francisco. And I was I knew that the place, if I ever stopped, would be in a country. And I knew this area here, and I knew that my forefather Robert Buckles, who was born May the 15th, 1702 in Yorkshire, England, came over when he was a young boy of 17 and married into the Quaker family, and in 1932 with 15 other families, came down from Bucks County, Pennsylvania to Jefferson County, West Virginia, and have been here ever since. But not some Buckles had been here all along.
When you married Audrey,
yes.
Did you immediately leave San Francisco?
No.
was your employment there?
Well, I figured out a number of things that I didn't do, but yes, I sat down in the park, figuring out what should I do. I was the president of Londonderry Products. Was one job. No pay connected with it, but I was I had the job. Then I sat down in the park, figuring out what shall I do, and I began to think about automobiles that were passing, different colors. Houses, everywhere I saw the paint. I thought that's a good business to be in, and that'll take me to South America. So, oh yes, then I went around to the various paint companies that had foreign service, and I remember going to this one and talking to the vice president. I had a great talk with him on about South America, and I speak Spanish. And then he started asking me some technical questions. And then he said, well, you don't know a damn thing about the paint business. He said, what you should do is go out and work for one of these companies. Not our company, work for another one, and then come back up as soon as you know something about the paint business. And I did that. And the first one I went was a lid company. It was interesting, all right, but it was I couldn't get enough experience. And I went to the General Paint Corporation. They were, the officials of that company were the great travelers, and it was the General Paint that I wanted to be with, composed of 6 different companies, all of them young people. When it started in, formed the General Paint. And there was a paint company, Deutsche Korn, run by 2 ex-veterans of World War I, and I wanted to work for them, but the job that I would have taken, he was doing it himself. So I told him, here's an idea. I look over this place, I see the one end of it's higher than the other of the floors, right on the bare ground. I'll get my dungarees and clean that place up down below. You just give me a job. So he gave me a job, and almost immediately one of the paint makers didn't show up. They put me in a job. The varnish maker, they gave me a job handling the varnish, making of varnish, and complicated formula got up to 550 degrees. You turn on the China wood oil and put it, and I said, I got to put that down on the board. I can't remember that. So on the bulletin board I wrote out the formula, and after a while the manager, the young Italian, came running out there. He'd forgot about me, and I'd already taken these, following the time, following the formula. Says you're a born varnish maker. I worked there for 3 months and enjoyed it, and learned how to not do anything. And I went back to Oliver Orrick, the president of the General Paint Corporation, and when they found out I'd been working for Deutsche Korn, he called the others in to look me over again. That was quite a thing to work for Deutsche Korn.
What made you want to move to West Virginia?
Simply, I'd be happier in the country. I knew this part of the country very well, and I think his thing had 20 years always, and I knew that I never retired. I was still driving the tractors here when I was 102.
What made you want to live and work on a cattle farm?
What?
What made you want to work on a cattle farm?
Well, that was the easiest way to handle the business. This had been a milking situation here with a couple of hundred milk cows, but not for me. Oh, and they had always had a farm manager on this place. But I'm the first one in 200 years that's called the place farm. But I had planned to. They had a manager, and I kept him, so not that he'd just been signed on, so I kept him for a year. And I took over and called it Gap View Farm.
Since the end of World War II, many wars have taken place. The Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the Gulf War, for example. Do you believe that war can be justified?
No.
No? Why?
Not unless you're attacked.
If you were 16 again and facing the same decisions, but knowing all that you know in life now, would you still have enlisted in 1917?
Sure. Yeah.
Knowing what you know about the world today, what do you miss most about the way the world used to be?
Well, of course, as far as I'm concerned, there are too many automobiles, too many speedsters. Everybody's in a hurry. They're not going any place, but they're in a little big hurry.
What is your favorite thing about the modern world?
Oh. Well, that's a pretty deep question. You think I'm qualified to answer that?
What concerns you most about young people today?
I'm not concerned about them. They take care of themselves.
Do you have any advice that you would like to offer them?
Sure, be independent. I feel that young people should be allowed to express themselves, express the ideas, and plan ahead. I think that the young people today are in a position to plan for the future, and that is very important. And to make what's important for them to make decisions for themselves.
Do you have any questions that you would like to ask us?
Oh. What are you going to do with all this information? Have I been any help or not?
Yeah, a great deal. You have. Thank you very much. It's been an honor. Thank you, Mr. Buckles, for so generously and candidly sharing with us your thoughts and life experiences.
We would also like to thank your gracious daughter, Susanna, for helping make this day possible for us.
On behalf of the entire World War I documentary history class at St. Helena High School and of Mr. Motzi, we thank you.
It's truly been an honor.